Welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We couldn't do these without the incredible support of our sponsors, and we want to take a moment to say thank you to all of them. First, thanks to our diamond sponsor, Varsity Brands, including BSN, Varsity Spirit, and Herff Jones. Varsity Brands, elevating student experiences in sport, spirit, and achievement. We also want to say thank you to our platinum sponsors, including Camp Mobile, where leaders communicate better, Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing, Ephesus Lighting, innovating a brighter future at every level, Gipper, sports graphics made incredibly simple, and Vital Signs, bring student achievements to life. Thanks to all of our great sponsors. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest today is Jim Harris. Jim is a certified master athletic administrator, and he's the coordinator of athletics and student activities at T.C. Williams High School. That may sound familiar to a lot of you, in Alexandria, Virginia. Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jake, for having me.
Yeah, I was just telling somebody the other day, one, I guess, unintended consequence is a buzzword now, but a positive unintended consequence of COVID has just been the ability and the frequency of making connections, through the internet and various websites. And, you and I have got connected through the NIAAA's website. And so it's great to have you on the program.
It's great to be here. I've been patiently waiting my turn.
Well, let's go and get started. As you know, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school and college, and maybe how your love of sports led to a career in athletic administration.
Well, I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, about 4 miles from where I work today. And I actually went to Edison High School, which is on the other side of the tracks of Alexandria, so they say. I played a little basketball. After high school, I went to George Mason University, right down the street from where I grew up. College so nice, I went there twice for my undergraduate in mathematics and my graduate work in education leadership. I was a gym rat once I got into high school. I wasn't the most sports related person growing up until I got into it. And a buddy of mine coaxed me to try out for the freshman basketball team. And as a 5'10", 5'11" freshman, I was more than welcome on the team. And then I fell in love with the game. And so I've started playing. I was playing every day from the time I was 14 until I probably about 25-ish. So I stayed local for college, and I still kept in contact with the high school program. And they had a change in coaching staff, and the person who was my JV basketball coach ended up getting the varsity job. And I had stayed connected with him, and he offered me my first coaching position at 19 years old. I was the JV assistant coach, and it was the best $750 I ever made in my life.
Absolutely.
And then from there, that kept me in a coaching career that lasted about 20 years before I went over to the dark side of athletic administration.
Yeah, that's I've heard that term used, more than once. Let's go and talk about that transition, going from, coach of your own program to now the coach of coaches. How did you feel that went? And again, was that a decision that you made? Was it, dropped on you? Hey, Jim, guess what? You're going to be the AD. Talk about that transition.
Well, the only way to make any extra money in education is to get more education. So it was time to, I got a bachelor's degree in math. And so I said, well, I need to get a master's degree. And so either, you have your opportunities to do master's in education, technology, the education board. But I decided I wanted to do education leadership because it opened up more doors. So I went into the program thinking, oh, I could be and an athletic director. And as you get into an education leadership program, they tell you all the things that the athletic director has to do, and it's more and more. And we'll probably talk about that later, how the job has changed so much in the last 20 years. So I was like, well, forget that. I want to be an AP. I'll be an assistant principal. But as I went through the internship program, I was drawn more and more back to athletics. It just athletics is, you get to see the kids in their best light every day, as opposed to our colleagues, the assistant principal, that don't necessarily get to see the best of each kid every day. And so after I finished my program, I was in a crossroads of what to do. And one of my professors at George Mason was also a principal at a neighboring school. He said, well, why don't you come over to my school? You still teach some math, but you can also work in our activities department, because the director of student activities is in charge of the math department. So I think that'd be a good match. And so over the course of now almost 10 years, even more than that, you could see that what I was doing was already, coaching the coaches with my own program, but now I just do it at a bigger scale.
No, absolutely. I'm always fascinated about the paths and journeys that, bring us to where we're at now. You touched a little bit on it. So let's go and talk about, mentoring in our business and our profession. We always talk about the importance of leadership and mentoring that next generation. So share some of your mentors, maybe teachers or coaches you had growing up, or people that you've worked with or worked for. The expression I always like to use is, I still hear those voices in my head when I'm talking to a coach or a kid or sometimes a parent. So whose voice do you still hear?
The voice started from when I was very young. My grandfather was my first one. It was my biggest mentor. I was raised primarily by my grandparents, and my grandfather taught me the benefits of work ethic, family, and keeping to your word. And I miss him very much to this day, but he has been a great impact in my life. And then I've been lucky enough throughout the way, whichever path that I've chosen, I've also had great mentors of that. When I was discovering what it is to be a teacher, I had two great math teachers, Mike Lenowitz and Andy Blunt. Andy Blunt is, he was a great softball coach at Edison High School. He was there for over 20 years. They named the field after him. So I got the chance to see, really for the first time, the teacher coach aspect, how that blended. And then as I got into coaching, first was Paul Downey, the first basketball coach I worked with, who got me into the business. And, and then I had a great opportunity to work with a lot of different people. Gary Hall, who was at Herndon High School. And, we had some great teams there. We had some great Division I athletes. And then, I ended my career working with Steve Douglas, who was a great basketball mind, a second generation coach who taught me a lot of the game and the interactions with the players. Now, as I transitioned over to athletic administration, I was lucky enough to work with some great people from the VI AAA. Jerry Carter who was a former president of the VI AAA, was my internship coordinator at the high school. So I was able to, pick his ear a lot, and that actually got me into the VI AAA, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But then as I left Jerry and moved on to other schools, the DSAs, the Director of Student Activities I've worked with, have had a profound impact in my life. Pat Full, Greg Dombrowski, and James Parker and Burke Stoy, all those guys have added many layers to my toolbox.
I just love to hear the stories and, those individuals that were involved. It's a great reminder for all of us that we didn't get here by ourselves. You touched on it, and again, perfect transition. We have a lot of younger ADs that listen to the podcast, and I think it's important for them to understand the journey that we take. So take us on that journey of you getting involved with your state association, the VI AAA, talking about leadership training courses and up to your CMAA project. How did that journey play out?
As I said, when I got into got into an education leadership and administrative program, and with talking with Jerry, he said, well, the VI AAA is our state athletic administration association, and they offer all these courses and certifications for athletic administrators, or even people that are interested in it. So I was like, sign me up, and so then that's when you take 501 and 502, those basic ones, and then your head explodes. It's like, oh my goodness, there's so much more. I mean, I can't believe I've coached for almost 20 years and gotten away with some of this stuff. But there, it captured the fire in me too, with this lifelong learner in me, that it's the most authentic education, the most authentic experiences that you can get. Because most places there's 1, 2, maybe 3 people working in your athletic office in your school, as opposed to 20, 30, 40, 50 teachers. And the administration can't give you enough or the most authentic professional development. And that's what everybody, that's the great thing about the NIAAA and the VI AAA, is that they give you those authentic stories and how those things that you need to get better. So like you get your RAA, and then I moved on to a whole new school system. And, my director of student activities, he had his CAA, and I'm like, okay, I've heard of that. And then, luckily, we're in a pretty more affluent school district, and he was able to pay for the school was able to pay for these classes that I would love to take. I'd take 2 every quarter, whatever I could get my hands on going to, that it wasn't a repeat. And, and so, I've taken classes here or there, and that, that led to this pandemic. I'm at home, we at TC Williams, we shut down. I mean, we have no contact with the athletes. And it's well, what can I do to better myself? What can I do to better the department? And it's like, well, let's get down and do this CMAA project. And, I titled mine, Hitting the Reset Button, Changing the Fan Experience at TC Williams. And so it encapsulated everything I had done in the year and a half that I'd been at TC to better the fan experience, most of which is through the technology. I'm kind of the technology buff. How do I, how can I make things easier on me by using the technology? Some of our colleagues are a little bit hesitant to go into something that's different, but I'm full speed ahead. And so, I had a 75 slide PowerPoint and everything. I think the people were the committee was a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of stuff I put in there. If I had to do it again, I'd pare it down a little bit, but I wanted to share just everything I've done. And but it was just so much, and I've embraced this technology.
I was going to ask you, I just rolled off of the National Certification Committee after about 10 years. And I was going to ask, did you do the written project or the oral presentation? Sounds like you did the oral. And sounds like a wonderful project and a great reminder to our listeners that you don't have to invent something brand new to be a CMA project. I guarantee that you're doing something right now at your school. Maybe it's with kids or coaches or facilities. You're doing something right now that would make a great CMA project. So encourage you all to follow up on that. And Jim, congratulations on attaining that level. I always like to say that less than 4% of all athletic directors across the United States have earned their CMAA. So that's put you in quite an elite group. You talked a little bit about your situation there at TC Williams. So let's go and jump into the COVID discussion. We're coming up on 1 year of COVID's impact to our listeners. We're recording this on February 18th. And one thing we've seen is that there has not been a standard response. Some states have shut down completely. Others have gone business as usual. Other states have gone hybrid, both with sports and with academics. So Jim, share with our listeners what's happening in Virginia, what's happening at TC Williams right now as far as return to school and return to play.
We all shut, and just like everybody else, we all shut down right around March 13th. We went out and we weren't going to come back until our superintendent was satisfied with the metrics are good. And so we've been 100% virtual. We couldn't even get in and meet with our athletes to do conditioning, anything. We were, stay home, stay safe. And so that lasted, until, up until about 3 weeks ago. For athletics, we weren't able to do anything with our athletes. Our coaches went in and they were flourishing. They were meeting with their players, teaching them the game, X's and O's, Y's, and giving them all the resources they need to maintain their shape and their conditioning. But we weren't able to meet. And in Virginia, we condensed our 3 seasons and didn't start them until December. And in the city of Alexandria and TC Williams, we decided that we weren't going to participate in that first season, the traditional winter season: basketball, wrestling, indoor track, gymnastics, cheer. We decided we weren't going to do that. That was a tough decision, but we had to do what was best for our community. But it wasn't until about 3 weeks ago that the whole paradigm shifted, and the numbers are going down. And so our superintendent said, well, we're getting close to that fall season. Why don't you guys participate? You guys got the green light. And so, our office scrambled to get everything together, get the COVID procedures, get the screeners, get the health department on board with some of the things that we were doing. And, in less than a week later, we had 55 athletes for football. And then this past week, we just started the rest of our fall sports. Academically, we're still 100% virtual. We won't be going back into the classroom for another 2, maybe 3 weeks. And then we'll start doing the hybrid learning, half our kids on 2 days and then the other half on another 2 days, of the kids that want to return. And so right now it's about less than half want to return. So it's, God bless our teachers for working hard to get ready. Everything has changed over the last year. The whole education system has taken a 180-degree turn.
Yeah, well, I guess congratulations for, getting the sports back. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, so you don't have to answer this question if it's just too sketchy, but I'm always curious for the states that, did not reopen, let's say from a sports standpoint. Was there a rationale, some specifics as to, why, you're not going to open, when, and again, this is me talking, so many other states are playing without incident. Was that a frustration for you guys? And again, I'm not trying to jam you up here.
Of course it is, because we, our neighbors all around us, pretty much everyone in Northern Virginia was doing stuff. They were doing conditioning. They were playing in the winter season. And, here's TC Williams holding out. But, to our superintendent's credit and the mathematician in me, we had, strict criteria of what we needed to do to be open. The exposure rate needed to be this, and the rate. The criteria was given from the beginning, and it sucks that we didn't get it. We didn't meet it until now, but I have to support 100% the superintendent's decision.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. One of the things we like to do with the podcast is share this idea of best practices. And you've been a very successful athletic administrator. So I'm going to give you a chance to brag. What are a couple of things that, when you look at your program at TC Williams, whether it's kids or coaches or whatever, that you can look at that and say with equal parts pride and humility, boy, we do this better than anybody. We really do a great job with this. What are a couple best practices you can share?
As I said, I'm a technology guy, and I think what we've done in the last 2 years at TC is really embraced the technology, and we've really pushed it out. Over this pandemic, I started putting out little video vlogs or podcasts, as I call them. Cheap plug to the TC Athletic Podcast in the corner. but just to, we getting that information out there in a way, in a manner that the student athlete would like it, as opposed to, just a blanket email. Nobody reads an email. Less and less people read emails unless you're an administrator now these days. So that was one of the things we did. And I think we've used the technology to help communicate, and communication is such a key. I mean, we've recently partnered with East Bay and from this group from now on to make an app, an app that is our one-stop shop, where it has our schedules, our rosters, all of our COVID information, and all our ancillary apps, where we're like our ticketing, our concessions, all the stuff you can do online, because nobody carries cash anymore. So it all has to stay, we'll just all link it all to your card and pay from your phone. But the app is one of the biggest features of it now is notifications. We can send notifications out like our team's on pause. Let's send out a notification telling everybody, don't come to the game tonight. There is no game. And we've, as I said, we've found a way to incorporate all this technology, and then now we found a means to put it all together in one place.
Yeah, I was going to comment on your background there. I think that's certainly a demonstration of some technology skills. I'm just the opposite. I'm not a tech guy, but what I share with people is if I can put together a podcast like this, which has been fairly successful, you can do that at your school and feature your kids, your coaches, your community. And so I encourage them, just like you do, to embrace technology. That's great. Okay. Jim, another question that we've been asking our athletic directors has to do with the theme of, social awareness, social justice, if you will. And my question has been this: what are some things that we can do as athletic administrators? What are some things that we can do better in this area of social awareness? With our kids, with our community. Got any ideas?
I'm lucky enough that my wife is a school social worker, so I'm able to I'm able to pull a lot of ideas and a lot of to hear her ideas on everything. Part of my big mission is inclusion. TC Williams is one of the most. It's the biggest high school and largest high school in the state of Virginia, and it's also one of the most diverse. Last I checked, we had about 72 different countries and, a multitude of languages spoken. And, my big thing is I want inclusion. And so that's, I push our coaches to get out and publicize their programs to not just, the normal avenues. So get in, in a ideal situation, when we're in the building, go up to, we have a whole floor, what we call the International Academy, is 1,200 English language learners, just wanting to be involved with the school, but maybe not necessarily knowing how, through either culturally or it's just new. And so I push our coaches to go and try to pull them in. So, the biggest thing is, inclusion and max participation. I also challenge our coaches not to just keep the bare minimum. If you got, not 8 cheerleaders, keep 14 basketball players. Push yourself as a coach to keep everybody included.
That's some great ideas. And as you mentioned, you got a great resource there to work with. Okay. Let's go and lighten things up a little bit. I always ask the ADs, what's your favorite part or parts of the job? What gets you excited about coming to TC Williams every day?
Well, the greatest thing is every day is different. It's never, when you're a teacher, you wait, you get to the school, the warning bell rings, you teach a class, you get a planning period, you teach another class, then you stay after, and then you go home, and it's rinse and repeat for every other day for 180 days. But being in athletics, every day is different. You come in there with a handful of things on your agenda to do for the day, and then by the time lunchtime comes, you've been working hard, but yet you haven't got to those 6 things, which is, can be terrifying for a list completer, but it's you got to, I love it. Every day is a new challenge, and it's never the same. If you got, some days are longer, of course, you're covering a game, but every game is different. It's the greatest thing is that no 2 days are ever alike.
Oh, absolutely. We've shared that many times about having your list. I'm going to get these three things done by lunchtime, and it's 4 o'clock, and you haven't even started on the list. Yeah, and that's definitely a great thing about our position. Um, I got to ask you the question for our listeners. If you don't know, TC Williams, famous school made famous in the Denzel Washington movie, Remember the Titans. Do you have a Remember the Titans story you can share with our listeners?
Uh, Unfortunately, no. I mean, well, yes and no. Uh, I grew up, as I said, I grew up on the other side of Alexandria, in the Fairfax County side, as opposed to the city of Alexandria. So growing up, TC was one of our biggest rivals. And so it's always, you go over there, not hate, but you always wanted to beat those guys. We're going to beat TC. And now being on the other side, I just want to beat everybody else. So, we are, this week is a big week for TC Williams in itself. We're going to be, we're voting on changing the name of the school. And, our community is putting in their input for the second round of voting. And, hopefully in a few weeks, we'll be able to announce a brand new name for TC Williams. But the Titans will always be remembered, and we're going to keep the Titans name, knock on wood.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Again, great story. I know, Hollywood took a couple of liberties with it, but again, that must be very cool to be a part of that. Well, Jim, it's been great connecting, I guess sort of kind of face to face after, trading emails for several months, but we're not done yet. We always like to wrap up with what we call the athletic director's toolbox. So I'm going to challenge you right now to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. But I'm only going to let you put 3 items in their toolbox. What 3 things are going to go in your athletic director toolbox?
Well, the first thing I'd have to tell them is authentic communication. Is that many times if you're new, you're a new administrator, you're new to a job, you get all this information and you want to keep it to yourself. It's almost a power trip. We want to keep all the power here. It cannot be farther from the truth. Be sure to give as much information, communicate as much as you can with as many people as possible to keep everybody in the loop and on the same page. Now, the second thing is, you have to be, it's almost a mindset. You have to be willing to try new things. The five words worst in the English language is we've always done it. We've always done it. So you have to try new things. Even, a lot of times it's going to fail. I mean, there's no doubt, but you have to be willing to try, because that one time it works, it's going to be great. And finally, the last thing is you have to be visible. More and more, when I started coaching 20 some odd years ago, almost 25 years ago, the athletic director had just athletics on their plate. And now more and more, even today in Northern Virginia, there's not a lot of athletic directors left, or director of student activities. So we encompass clubs and all sorts of, everything, the building, custodians, academic resources. But all of that, no matter how much they put on you, you need to be visible. People need to know who you are, even if you're going to have to be your program's biggest cheerleader on the sideline, on the morning announcements, wherever you need to be. It's just be visible, because it's real easy just to stay in your office and put out fires all day, but be out there and be the leader, the coach of the coaches, as you love to say.
Oh, I love that last one. And sometimes, if you get out of your office, you won't have those fires put out because you've already dealt with it. Reminds me of what the sportscasters love to say now about the greatest ability for an athlete is availability, that they're healthy and they keep playing. And I think you touch on that with that visibility, being there, being present at the events. Great stuff. Jim Harris, CMAA, TC Williams High School. Jim, if one of our listeners wants to reach out and get in touch, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
You can email me. It's really james.harris@acps.k12.va.us, or you can follow me on Twitter. It's TCW CSA. I got that at TCW CSA, and uh, I'm always willing to answer questions, help out in any way possible for old ADs, young ADs, aspiring ADs. We've all been there. I'll help anybody.
Okay. And for those of you who have not been on the NIAAA's website, you need to check it out. Jim's a frequent contributor to that. Always has some good stuff to share. To our listeners, thanks as always for tuning in. Remember, the Zoom recordings of these podcasts are being uploaded to the FIAAA Educational Athletic Director YouTube channel. And until we see you again, thanks for tuning in to the Educational AD Podcast.